What's going on, Forceful Players? Ryan Miles here from On Tilt Gaming, here for episode 5 of this daily video series that I'm doing. Obviously, you may have realized that daily does not include weekends. Friday I was traveling for the ARG in Connecticut, so this video is actually going to talk a little bit about that and the deck that I played, and in general, having success with the Tier 2 deck, right? So I had posted on the Forceful US group that I was thinking about either playing Imal or Shayla. I really wanted to play Shayla, but by the time I got to my friend Drizz's house in New York, where we were staying for the night, I realized that I didn't have I didn't own nearly enough cards to be able to play the Shayla deck, and I had like zero testing on it, zero practice. I just knew some cards that I wanted in the deck. I thought that the Thunder Golem, the 8/8 that like attacks and taps a guy, was really good. I thought that the 1 mana 6/6, it's a 3 mana 6/6, but it has swiftness and it costs 1 if it's thundering. I thought that card was pretty good. And Shayla's Foresight does like 3 different things, and it's like put an attacking or blocking resonator on the top or bottom of a deck, and you draw a card. There's also a card that like puts a resonator in your opponent's hand, and you draw 2 cards. Like, there's a bunch of really cool, powerful cards that I thought were good, and I wanted to throw these all in the deck, but I was missing a lot of them. So I didn't end up playing Shayla. That was kind of off the table. So I set around to building Imal, which is another deck that I wanted to play. I had played that deck in Montreal previously, and I didn't play the list that you've seen topping in some of the European events, the Faily combo list. And if you don't know what that deck does, it tries to use Imal's ruler side to untap cards like Sacred Elf and Melfi on your opponent's turn, so that you have access to more mana on your opponent's turn, and then you play powerful cards like Jupiter, or specifically Jupiter, I guess, on your opponent's turn at a very quick pace, and then you play Faily on your turn, and then you use Imal to use multiple iterations of Faily on your opponent's turn. And when you're using Faily to flicker Jupiter, Jupiter has a very powerful option of enter abilities where she can cancel a chant, so now you're immune to final battle and things like that. You can draw a card, you can return resonators your opponent plays, or your own resonators if you want, to your hand, to your opponent's hand, and then you can also recover a resonator. So like, as long as you have enough red will available, you can use Faily to flicker the Jupiter, you can cancel an opponent's chant or draw a card, and then you can recover the Faily, and you can do it again, make another Jupiter, cancel another chant, draw another card, recover Faily again. And basically, as long as you have red mana available, you can make as many Jupiters as you want. And it's just very, very strong when the combo goes off. The problem is just finding the pieces in a reasonable amount of time and making sure that you don't get interacted with such that the Jupiter gets Feyer's spelled or the Faily gets killed off in some fashion, stuff like that. I don't have any experience on that deck. I've played it like a little bit in Minneapolis when I was hanging out with Brandon Bremont. So that's not the deck I'm talking about, right? The deck that I'm talking about is the one I played in Montreal. It's a control style, like mid-range Imal deck. It tries to get a lot of value off of life-stealing Altar and some powerful 3-drops, such as Rachel and Gil Lapis the Usurper. So your first couple turns are just play a life-stealing Altar, turn 2, Kaguya's Moonbeam Butterfly for a life-stealing Altar, and then like turn 3 you just deactivate. You're playing 9 to 10 white stones, so that you always have access to the deactivate, and then the rest of your stones are either black or green. I mean, like, they're all black, green, white in some capacity. It's just that white is your primary color, and the rest is green and black for cards like Gil Lapis and Rachel, right? So you're really just trying to get value out of your life-stealing altars and your powerful enter abilities and leave the field abilities from your resonators, and then like the rest of your deck is Severing Winds, Feyer's spells, and then cards that you search off of Gil Lapis, right? So Miscalculation, Flourishing Hope, Thought Control, Nameless Mist, Final Battle, stuff like that. And that's pretty much like the entire deck. It's not there's not a lot going on there. You're just you're trying to flip your Imal, get your life-stealing altars, call a bunch of stones early, so like on turn 3 you're on like 4 stones, or on turn 4 you're on like 6 stones, that kind of stuff, depending on how many altars you see, right? And then you're using your life-stealing altars to control the board, trigger your Rachel's abilities when you need them, and then just like lock your opponent out of the game. And then you play cards like Karmic Retribution to flip your Imal back down so that you can flip again. And when you flip again, you get to put in a 3-drop from the top 3 cards of your deck, stuff like that. It's a really fun deck. It's very, I think, difficult to find success with, because you are not going to win the game quickly, ever. And then you have to be able to compete with Shahrazad in like a long, grindy game. And if the Shahrazad player knows what they're doing, it can be very difficult to cancel the appropriate cards. Like, you really want to cancel Ruin Story so they can't have infinite value. You have a lot of value yourself between things like Rachel and Gil Lapis, and like you have a lot of disruption. You know what's going on in their hand, because of Thought Control and Nameless Mist and stuff like that. You get to stack their deck because you play Rachel, so you can really lock even a Shahrazad deck out of the game if you're able to stop the Ruin Story as approaching. And then you have cards like Lorite to make sure the Genie's not hitting you too hard. You have Lorite to stop the Shahrazad ability. Like, you can beat that deck. And then, like, you have Drain attached to Imal, so when you actually do, you know, she's only going to be like a 7/7 or a 9/9, but like that does kind of matter when you're gaining like 7 or 9 life a turn by attacking with her, or even just blocking with her, you know? Like if the Shahrazad player plays an Ava or a Patrolling Guard Doll and wants to attack with it, you just block with your Imal. You don't take den damage, which is great. You gain 7 or 9 life, which is great. And then you get your ruler flip back down, which means you can flip her again, which is great. So there's a lot of good things going for the Imal Shahrazad matchup. And I did play against it a lot in the Montreal tournament. My deck was a little bit different from the way I built it this weekend, but I'll get there. So you can actually grind them out, but it's very difficult to do. You can't make many mistakes. All of your like Rachel searches have to be like incredibly impactful. You have to know exactly what cards you can and can't let your opponent have. One thing I see a lot when even like Shahrazad decks play Rachel is they'll look at the top 3 cards and they'll put all 3 cards in the graveyard, and that's something that like you almost never want to do. Because when you have information in your opponent's hand, you have like Thought Control, Nameless Mist, you've seen their hand, you know like all of their cards. When you look at the top 3 with Rachel, you're trying to leave at least 1 card on top of the deck so that you still have perfect information. You don't want them to draw an unknown card, and then it makes you more difficult to play around. You want to leave like the least powerful card on top, and even as long as it's not like something incredibly backbreaking, like you want to leave it there just so that they're still drawing into something that you know is there and you can appropriately play around. So that's just kind of like the way the deck plays. It's grindy, it's playing on like 5 to 6 stones, and it's using a bunch of different cards in interesting ways to try and lock your opponent out of the game. So I built this deck, I'm testing it, playing against IU, playing against Shahrazad, doing okay. The IU matchup is not very fun, but I'm testing the deck, and it's, you know, we're hanging out with my friends, so I'm drinking a little bit, and after about half a bottle of Jameson, like a lightning, not a lightning bolt, a light bulb went off in my head, and I remembered watching Jean-Paul Clintworth play this Fox deck at GP London, and he was using Blazer, and he was using Light of Transmigration to flicker Blazer, and he was using Light of Transmigration to flicker like Manticores and Omits. And I'm looking at my field, which has a Rachel on it, like a couple Life-Stealing Altars and a Demonic Dead, and I'm like, wait a minute, why am I playing Imal when I could just like take out 10 cards and then just put in like Tamas and Blazers and Light of Transmigration, and suddenly I'm a Fox deck. And that seemed really, really fun to me. Like, I absolutely love Blazer the Legendary Thief as a card. It still does the same thing where I'm looking at my opponent's hand and I'm making them discard cards, and I'm just like using Light of Transmigration to get even more value. And I'm like, if I'm going to play a janky control deck, like I really want to play Life-Stealing Altar, Light of Transmigration, Fox. So I do not remember putting this deck together because I was a little bit inebriated. I also texted or Facebook messaged John Paul asking him, like, here's my list, like, does this look good? Like, I don't know exactly what I'm doing because I've never built this deck before. And he gave me some tips. So I woke up with a fully intact Fox deck, and I was like, I don't remember building all of this, but I'm going to play it. We're going to have a good time. So we go to the tournament. I've got this Fox deck built. I'm playing round 1. It's an 11, 12, 13-man event. I think 13 people, right? And then, like, somebody just got their VIP mat and left, so really like a 12-man event. But it was 13 people from the outset, so I was lucky enough to get the round 1 bye. Most of us, like, I think there's 4 or 5 of us in the event who already have an invite. 3 of them are paid. So there's only a couple people actually gunning for the unpaid invite. So my brother is scooping to his friends. I'm playing it out because I want, you know, ARG credits so I can fund my venture into Lightseekers, which is a pretty cool game that I'm trying out right now. So I'm trying to win. Round 1 I have a bye, so that's pretty cool. Round 2 I play against, because I had a bye round 1, I get paired down in round 2 because I have a win, but I'm the lowest seeded win because of my bye. So I play against someone who's 0-1. It's IU, so I play Fox into IU, and I 2-0 the IU player. And then I was actually kind of surprised at how good Fox was against IU. Because when I think of IU, I'm like, okay, I need to have a sideboard for it. I need to know exactly, I need to have like Scarlet's Agonies and Separation of Fates in my sideboard so that I can win games 2 and 3, because most decks actually don't have a very good IU matchup game 1 because of how powerful the ruler is, because of how much damage it kind of pushes out of nowhere. And there are very specific cards that you need to not just take 4,000 damage. and like those cards are not very good against the meta of Shahrazad and Kirik and stuff like that. So I'm not main decking Scarlet's Agony. I ended up throwing in Melfi's last minute, thanks to Jean-Paul's suggestion, actually. So I didn't really have a lot of game 1 going on against them, but I realized that, like, they don't really turn the corner and start, like, putting out that 4,000 damage until, like, turn 3 at the absolute earliest, usually turn 4, turn 5, and by then, I'm able to, like, play down some life-stealing altars, flip my Fox, and then start looking at their hand and discarding souls to reduce the amount of damage they can do, and I'm also playing a flyer at the same time. And because I was able to use Blazer and use Manticore and then Light of Transmigration to consistently attack their hand and remove their souls, not only was I removing their damage, but I was also removing Ayu's ability to fly, so she could never get in for any damage whatsoever, and I actually 2-0'd my first Ayu opponent, and then in round 3 I played against Ayu again on stream, and I beat Ayu there too, and I was like, that's actually kinda good. Like, a lot of rogue decks should be losing to Ayu, just because of, like I said, the polarizing nature of game 1, and then, you know, games 2 and 3 is where you can really come back. But I was pleasantly surprised with how well Fox performed in that matchup. And I also, so yeah, round 1 was a bye, round 2 I beat Ayu, round 3 I beat Ayu on stream, round 4 intentional draw because I was 3-0, so now I'm 3-1, make it in the top 4, concede to my top 4 opponents so we can go play for his unpaid invite, and then Ayu ended up winning the whole tournament and getting the unpaid. So that was my tournament experience. But I did get to play against Shahrazad, like, for fun, because I went there. My brother had a Shahrazad deck. He was actually playing the Puppet Master that I was hating on so hard in my last video. I thought the card actually did pretty well. It was very difficult for my deck, for the Fox deck, to remove the Puppet Master because my removal is pretty much limited to Amit, and I don't want to Amit a 6/6 when there's like a 10/10 on the board, right? And they have cards like Optional Possession to fly over my 10/10 and really hit me in the face. Like, I want to gain more life with Amit. The main problem that I had with the Fox into Shahrazad matchup wasn't even like the late game grindy Ruin Stories recurring type thing. It's just the fact that they played a freaking 10/10 on turn 2. You know, it wasn't a 10/10, but it was like an 8/8, and I'm like, I'm about to take like 8 damage, and there's not, like, I don't want to block it because then I lose a resource available to like start making Fox stuff, and then like that's not good. But also, like, taking 9 damage on turn 3 is going to be bad because then I'm not going to have, you know, enough life to do demonic dead things and actually like hold up on value. And it gets pretty difficult to maintain a high life total against that deck with Demonic Dead, because once you have Demonic Dead in the graveyard, anytime they activate their Shahrazad ability, you have to activate Demonic Dead in response so that you don't get Evil Elemental Uprising. I was only playing 1 Demonic Dead in my entire deck. I had like put in 2 for a hot second, and I didn't like it at all. So it's like you have to pay a lot of life to keep it alive, and then like in order to remove their guys, because they get to play so many dudes so quickly on like the turns where you're setting up, they just have so much damage. You don't really get the opportunity to final battle unless you're like already turning the corner with Amit and stuff like that. So I think it is a really like poor matchup, strictly because they get to pretend to be an aggro deck while also being a control deck. They get to develop these big resonators and then hold open mana for Lorite, and then like you just can't really get your stuff going because you're really vulnerable. Like, they draw so many cards because of Approaching a Truth and Scarlet's Agony, and then they get to win counter wars because they play like double Lorite, quadruple Fire Spell, quadruple Severing Winds, and you have to like play mana to like cast guys, and you have to do things so fast just in order to keep your life total high enough that it's just difficult to find a window to actually resolve a Fox ability. So yeah, not something I would like super recommend if you're trying to like win a GP, but it was a lot of fun because when you do, even when Shahrazad doesn't open, like if they don't open Ava, even if they're not like casting an Ava on turn 2 or turn 3, and like immediately pressuring your life total, you can get to that late game scenario where you're casting Blazer, and then you're also like making, like, once you resolve a Blazer and look at their hand, you get to see exactly how many Lorites they have. Like, they almost have to Lorite Blazer, and if they Lorite Blazer, like, they just like made your guy an 8/8, cool. Now I'm gonna play Light of Transmigration. I'm gonna flicker the Blazer, take a look at your hand again. Like, you're just trying to, like, Blazer's sole purpose is to proactively prevent them from having answers to your Fox effect, and then once that finally sticks through, you get to see their whole hand, know exactly what you need to play around, and then you can start making the chimeras you want to make and doing the things you want to do. So the deck that I played was like definitely a slower version, and I'll leave the deck list in the description just so you guys have some access to look at it if you want. Again, not something I'd recommend to take to a GP, but it was a lot of fun. And if Shahrazad is getting hit in some capacity in the next set, which we all hope is happening, I think that it's a viable deck. You know, I think it really does churn out late game value and have like the best stabilization tools out of the decks that I've played, and even more so than Imal. Like Imal's stabilization tool is being able to get into combat with your ruler, which means that you're not calling stones, and it can leave you in some awkward situations because like most of your deck is like 3-drops. Like those are your proactive plays, your resonators are 3-drops. So Imal can have a hard time if she's not calling stones anymore. And you can play this card called Fairy Tale Library Kingdom. It untaps your J ruler if it's a human, basically, and it's really good if you want to keep calling stones and then have a blocker, but it's vulnerable to addition removal, problematic in that sense, etc., etc. So Fox did feel really good. Would definitely recommend playing it or playing around with it if you're interested in having a fun deck that maybe can take games off of Shahrazad. Like the best way that you actually do have to take games off of Shahrazad as Fox is to Kaguya's Moving Butterfly for a Shackles on turn 2. And then things get a little bit easier just because the Avas like are only 7/7s instead of 10/10s. Like you have more time to turn the corner. So yeah, overall that was my event. Had a fun time playing a fun deck and did pretty well with it, dodging my worst matchup and then learning about a matchup that I thought would have been abysmal. So I hope you guys like this video. Like the Fox deck in the description, and thanks for sticking with me, not being here on Friday, but being here on Sunday. So once again, any name ideas for this series, make sure to leave me those as well, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one.